Eiichiro Oda's magnum opus, One Piece, has spanned over 2 decades and amassed over 20 story arcs, en route to becoming one of the greatest epics ever told in fiction. But if there's one story arc which has been discussed and anticipated amongst the fans for the longest time, it's the current ongoing Wano Kuni arc. Wano was first hinted at over a decade ago, and the readers of the story have had build up for it for the longest time ever, and in 2018, the arc finally hit. And here we are. Many fans have debated whether or not Wano has delivered, and many have even said that it's one of the greatest arcs in One Piece history. But today, I'm here to discuss its potential flaws and or low points in a discussion with my friend Tron. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yo, what's good everybody? It's Tron. Thanks again for having me on the video. Really excited to talk about Wano.
So man, I want to ask you, first and foremost, what are your overall thoughts on Wano?
Overall, Wano did have a lot of potential, but as we're coming to the closure of the arc, I don't really know if it's gonna live up to all of the potential it had. But I think it's still a fine arc.
So personally, I think that Wano Country set up so much ahead of time, where even the editors and Oda himself has been building up hype towards it, right? And expectation and hype is a very hard thing to deliver on, but if you end up delivering on it, right? We saw that back in Marineford, where stuff was hyped up to such an extent, but then Marineford, those 30 chapters, one after the another one, it was just straight bangers, and it delivered. I find that in Wano, the first couple acts didn't quite, manage to hit that sort of expectation being delivered, but I feel in Onigashima, the latter stages of Wano, the hype is definitely coming back, and you're seeing why this arc was set up to be such a thing. But one major flaw and criticism I have with Wano is the emotional stakes and tension in Wano is just not there, I feel. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially after, all this Will of Peace stuff, seeing people surviving, Oda really has to do a better job with stakes. And I know stakes don't always mean death, but I feel at this point we've had a bit too many fake out deaths at least. For example, the Scabbards, they've been back numerous times. Hopefully Kinemon is dead. I don't really see him being dead, but it's a hope. Also, just in general, it never really felt like Luffy was gonna lose. I mean, when they got to the roof, Luffy, even the first thing he said was, I don't feel like we're gonna lose this time, and they pretty much just haven't lost. Understandably, it's not really feasible for the raid to end at this point, but I feel Oda could do a better job just making it feel the Straw Hats did have a chance of not coming out on top.
I completely agree with the fact of, there's been too many fake out deaths. I know people don't want to talk about the cover page too much, but we remember that, Pound cover page story as well, right? To me, that whole cover page story was just a big FU from the death standpoint, whereas we want deaths and we want them to be definitive, and we also the Scabbards, right? As you said, I really hope they're dead, but deep down, I don't really believe it. I fully expect Kinemon, Kiku, and Ashura Doji to come back, and if they do come back, at this point it wouldn't be a surprise or anything, right? It would just be, okay, you haven't seen the bodies for too long, they're probably going to be back. And I think a lot of people held the expectation as well during the Scabbards fight with Kaido in the rooftop, right? Kaido will at least take out a few of them, but they miraculously all survived. And I don't know why Oda is so hesitant on, taking out characters. We also saw that with Hyogoro, right? You remember that distinct panel where there was a blade above Hyogoro's head at the end of a chapter. And then the next chapter, nothing comes of it. He just survives. So, that fake death build-up, to me, is, it's very irritating, in my opinion. Where it's just, I don't, what character purpose does Hyogoro serve other than being, that exposition guy saying, hey, when Zoro, is doing something, hey, I've seen samurais in the past like this with, Zoro's ancestors, which is pretty much confirmed now.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing about the stakes or tension that I didn't really like is, I mean, I guess it's happened for a long time, but let's go back to Alabasta. You know what happened with Luffy and Crocodile? Just the whole idea of when Luffy gets defeated or someone gets defeated, the villain kind of just leaves them there. Narratively, fine, but if we're looking at the story and trying to I guess, make it seem somewhat realistic. I just don't like when characters do that. So for example, when Kaido beats Luffy and kind of just throws him off the roof, I just find stuff like that a bit odd because Luffy lost, but it's almost like he didn't get defeated. He just falls off the roof, you know, eats some food, he's back to normal, back on the roof, and now he's even stronger than he was before he lost. And then Zoro, like, he tanks the ocean sovereignty, gets 30 broken bones, he gets a miracle drug, now he's back fighting, good or whatever. I understand with the Zoro thing, he's going to be injured after, but I feel like there's just no stakes for what happened in their fight with Kaido.
I think the best arcs in One Piece, there's always some sort of Straw Hat connection, right? So, you know, for example, in Enies Lobby, you know, we had the Usopp Nico Robin, like that big, like two pillars of like the Straw Hat crew in jeopardy, right? In Marineford, though we didn't have, you know, that much screen time with Ace, we knew what it meant to Luffy, right? Over here, right? I feel like Oda is really trying to play up that the Scabbards mean a lot, the people of Wano mean a lot, but have you really seen like enough where it's like we really want to worry about them? Like the emotional aspect is what's lacking. I feel like, you know, if you really think about it, yeah, Luffy and the Alliance, I mean, are going up against two Yonkos, which is an unprecedented threat to this point in the story. So like, if you really think about it, it should like potentially add up to being like one of the biggest stakes in the story. But the reason why it doesn't feel like it is because the emotion isn't there, I feel, which is there in a lot of other, you know, One Piece arcs where, you know, realistically, while reading through Wano, I've never once like felt the need to like, oh, like I want to cry, right? Or like I feel like, you know, teary-eyed. It's just not happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying, it's pretty much how I feel about it, because in almost every single other arc, the Straw Hats do have some sort of connection to the people, or like the main story at least. But for Wano, it feels almost like they're complete outsiders, kind of just trying to fulfill the wishes of the Wano citizens, who, as you mentioned, we don't really have a lot of connection.
Yeah, and would you feel like the Oden death is like a big enough like emotional like stake in the story?
I mean, personally, because Luffy and the Straw Hats don't really seem to connect to it, I think it was fine because of how it inspired the Scabbards, but with the Scabbards not really even seeming to play a pivotal role in Wano, I feel like we need a little bit more.
I agree with that. And you know, there's been some huge, you know, debates and theories floating around about the raid ending in failure, you know. Mr. Morch, One Piece YouTuber, he was a, you know, architect of that. Would you want something like that to happen at this point in the story?
Maybe if you asked me like 20 chapters ago, I could see it, but at this point, definitely not. I feel like the raid's just too far in. And also, I don't really know how it would be done in a way that would make sense, because it would be kind of weird if the Straw Hats just lost, and then Kaido and Big Mom just let them, you know, run away and train and then come back later.
So, this might be, you know, dwelling into headcanon stuff and not real criticism, but, you know, it's just something I want to put out there, right? We saw the themes of, you know, betrayal and the themes of, you know, we saw the conversation between Nami and Usopp saying like the getting captured and stuff, right? And then we also saw Big Mom bring up keep Nico Robin alive, right? Would you potentially see, right? Because right now the things are looking really good for the Alliance, right? We see like Yamato, Momonosuke, and Luffy up there, possibly joined by, you know, other forces as well. Mm-hmm. Like we're missing like the pheasant of the puzzle in like the Momotaro tale potentially. So like, would you ever see like these, like the Alliance is looking really good right now, they like all of a sudden fail, right? In order to build up the stake and tension of Wano, and like certain Straw Hats get captured, like Usopp and Robin or something like that, and that provides incentive for the Straw Hats to you know get good again, and you know like have that emotional stake there.
That's kind of yes and no for me. So I think that Kaido just needs to be defeated this arc. I can't really see a gap where like they go train or whatever, come back. But one thing that I could see happening is they beat Kaido. Big Mom betrays Kaido, gets the poneglyph, and then she steals Robin or something. And I could see that leading into the next arc where she runs away with Robin. But in terms of like her getting kidnapped in Wano as extra things, I don't really see that happening.
I mean, yeah, this was just like, you know, a little headcanon I had in order to, you know, like fill the void of like the stakes not being there, I think. But I think like the whole Big Mom betraying Kaido thing has been, you know, one of the big major talking points as well of Wano. And I, you know, as we're talking about Big Mom right now, let's just talk about her. What's your thoughts on Big Mom's inclusion in Wano? Because that raised a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah, so to me, it just feels a little bit forced. Because one thing that I really don't like about Big Mom's character is how she's constantly used as a gag. We saw what happened to her at the beginning of the raid with Frankie's motorcycle. We see her crew constantly being knocked away. And now it's almost like she's just a secondary fight to separate Kid from the Kaido fight. And personally, I don't feel like Big Mom really fits in Wano, especially not in the position she's in right now, because Kid, you know, his whole crew, basically Kid's whole plan was ruined because of Kaido. And, you know, Kaido permanently injured his right-hand killer, so I feel like Kid needs to be fighting Kaido. I don't know, I feel like Big Mom's okay as a fight, but Kid definitely needs to get back in there with Kaido.
I have major issues with the Big Mom character at this point, right? Because Big Mom, right? She's a Yonko, right? Yonkos are not meant to be taken lightly in the One Piece universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then constantly seeing Big Mom turn as a gag and as like a, you know, a narrative tool, which isn't like elevating her character in any sense. It's rather just demeaning her. That to me is a bit, you know, it upsets me a little, because it's like you have such an interesting character here, like an overgrown child type of character, right? And you understand like some gags I'm fine with, but then like overdoing the gags, to me, I am not really a big fan of that. One of the greatest highlights of Big Mom wasn't even through Big Mom, I feel. It was through Marco, when Big Mom held Marco captive there for a little while, where it's like Big Mom can easily take out like a first Yonko commander.
Yeah.
I really want, like, you know, Big Mom to have some distinction, and Big Mom to, you know, be like an ominous threat looming over the forces, and not being like, you know, taken aside by Kid and Law. And as you said, Kid's character directly aligns with Kaido's character. Kid really only has like one little, like, you know, bout with Big Mom, which forms a little bit of a connection between them two. And then there's Law, which I feel like has absolutely zero, you know, connection to Big Mom. Why is he fighting her? What's your like thoughts on like the future with like Big Mom's character?
So, I kind of see Big Mom somehow being redeemed. Obviously, I don't see her joining the Straw Hats or Straw Hat Alliance or anything, but I don't really see her as really an endgame villain, just because at the end of the day, her dream is kind of similar to Luffy's. She's just going about it in not the right way, because she's doing it by force. So I'm not really sure what's gonna happen. Like, maybe she gets amnesia again. I hope she doesn't. Or maybe something just happens in her character to where she's not going after the Straw Hats anymore.
Dude, if Big Mom gets amnesia again, I'm not even joking. I might drop One Piece for like a few months. That would legitimately piss me off. Like, I hate that trope so much. But you know, like, Big Mom aside, right? We've seen a few fights in Wano, right? In the especially latter stages, right? With like the Tobi Roppo fights and stuff like that. But a big criticism of Wano was also that there was so much off screen, right? Everything was off screen.
Yeah.
So, like, are you a fan of like progressing the story and just off screening like certain fights which are not necessary? Like, are you okay with that?
Yeah, so definitely not. But I think what's worse is sometimes I just don't understand what Oda decides to on-screen. Because he'll off-screen, like, really seemingly important fights, and then he'll have a chapter dedicated to Fukurokujo. Or, I probably butchered that name, but you know what I'm talking about.
You're fine. I think it's Fukurokujo.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
I don't know, it feels kind of
you
odd.
see, like... Sorry to interrupt. You go on.
Yeah, I'm just saying it feels kind of awkward, like what he puts focus on, and then he skips things that are seemingly a lot more important.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really did not need to see Raizo versus Fukurokuju.
Yeah.
Like, with due respect, like, they're very, like, and to me, they're very minor characters in the whole scheme of things. And then he, like, completely off screens, like, Kaido taking out Luffy for the second time.
Yeah.
It's like, why? And even like you know, like earlier in like the series, right? Zoro versus Killer. When he was like Kamazo, we like didn't even get like more than a couple pages of that, right? Which, I mean, it just felt a bit awkward to me. And, you know, a lot of things are just shown as like minor bouts and clashes rather than like full on like fights, which I feel like is something which is really lacking. Maybe Oda is just trying to keep up with his like, you know, arbitrary 5-year goal that he mentioned a few years ago, but of ending One Piece in 5 years. But I'm not sure that's possible either way. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of, you know, just off screening for the sake of progressing stories, because I feel like One Piece's greatest strengths, right, is showing emotion through fights, which just isn't like evident at this point.
Yeah, so also building on what you mentioned with the clashes, I actually have a question for you, because this is really highly debated now in the community. So, you know, essentially fights just being shown as classes. Can we assume that, you know, clashes in the past were actually full-on fights? Because a lot of the time we just see, you know, top tiers clash, then Oda just pans away from it. But since in Wano, a lot of these for example, page 1 in Sanji, pretty much like a nothing fight in the manga. In the anime, it takes a whole different turn. So is it okay to assume, like, you know, back in the, maybe, I'm trying to think of a good example. But
I mean, Shanks and Kaido, but that's not really considered a clash. It wasn't specified as a clash. But you've seen that quite a few times where, you know, like big name players, you know, had a bow or had a meeting, but then we don't know what happened afterwards or how it like sort of resolved. I know we've seen like a bit of like the clash between Shanks and Whitebeard, right? But like, what happened after the said clash? We don't really have much of a clue, right? Did they have more of a fight afterwards, or did they just, you know, break up and just say like, we're on our own way, we conveyed each other's message, right? But I would really love, like, you know, more of a, you know, I don't want like the anime to tell me what's happening. I want the manga to tell me what's happening, because sometimes I feel like the anime is just like, I'm not in 100% agreement with like everything in the anime is canon, because we see Batman tanking Luffy and Zoro at the same time, right? Which, like, let's be real here. Like, we love Batman, but like, come on.
And just going back to the fights in Wano for a moment, personally, one of the fights that was really underwhelming for me was everything with Nami, Ulti, and Usopp. Because Nami's fight especially, it just felt really underwhelming because there was no sort of outsmarting, there was not really any storytelling within the fight. It seemed kind of like she just got lucky with Big Mom, then landed one last attack. Because, you know, back in Alabasta, Nami versus Miss Doublefinger, it's all about Nami like running around trying to outsmart her opponent. Same with most of Usopp's fights, it's him like running around again trying to outsmart their opponents, but it felt like Oda didn't really give much care to them in their fights in Wano.
Yeah, I honestly, out of the Beast Pirate fights, I think my favorite one was probably Jinbei versus Who's Who, right? Because we saw like the reintroduction of like the what's it called? The 6 techniques. I forgot its like Japanese name. Rokushiki, yes, correct, thank you. So like, I really like the reintroduction of the Rokushiki, you know, to like diversify like how the fights worked. And Who's Who was just like, the man was a walking talking spoiler character, let's be real here. He's just a fun character to be around as well. But I was very much underwhelmed with like the Sasaki fight and the page 1 ulti fight, as you mentioned before, because, you know, we like Nami and Usopp's characters are centered around having those, you know, very creative fight ideas, right? We saw that in Eni's lobby too, where, you know, Nami's fight was her using her climb attack to like have this like different clones of her and etc to take out Khalifa, right? And we literally see nothing like that happen, which is underwhelming. And the fact that, you know, I don't want like sheer luck to like be a big factor in like a fight, which is like supposed to be like the character's big fight for that arc. Like a fight I really enjoyed was Robin and Brooke versus Black Maria, which I think was probably like, it was on par or better than the Jinbei versus Who's Who fight for me. Like, I feel like that's probably the best fight we've had apart from the rooftop
I
one.
agree.
Like, we saw, like in that fight, the reason why it worked, right, is we saw, like, Nico Robin's past being brought up again. Where, you know, it's the ongoing plot thread where it's like, can Nico Robin really have faith in her crewmates, and do her crewmates have faith in her? And that whole sort of element is brought back up again. And that's, like, the core of Nico Robin's character at the start. So that essentially being brought back, like, added, like, value to the fight. And, you know, that whole, like, you know, Olivia and Saul coming back as well for that brief moment with, like, that illusion. And then, like, Robin's, like, you know, dark character coming out and, like, her manifestation of her power up, which was really fun to see in my opinion. But, you know, nothing like that, nothing of sorts we saw with, you know, what's his face called? Page 1 and Ulti. Apart from that, thoughts on Roof Piece?
Roof Piece definitely was probably one of the most exciting things that I've seen in One Piece for a while. I mean, not much really to say about it. It was just pure hype, pure action. Everything about it was great. I feel like maybe one negative about Roof Piece is honestly, it was so good to the point that it was kind of just annoying whenever they showed away from it and we had those chapters in between. It really showed the difference in lack of quality. And
I feel like the core reason behind that is like the different character focus in Roof Piece, right? Where it's like the whole climatic build up to it, right? Which was there, which you don't see for the other characters. I think that's the reason why Roof Piece has so much value. And whenever Roof Piece came, you just saw like Oda's art itself, like some of those panels are genuinely brilliant. I know this is criticisms of Wano, but you know, we have to like accept like the great things in Wano as well, right? This is supposed to be like a very nuanced discussion. I want it to be like that at least. So like Roof Piece, I think, was such a big like hype factor in like the Onigashima raid, where it really overshadowed the other things when it wasn't Roof Piece. Speaking about like character values and adding like more to it, do you think the, you know, Wano characters are I know this is a little bit of a meme word, but like as saucy, you know, do you think they're good?
Yeah, so
like some,
at least for the Scabbards, personally I didn't really care about them at all until they started fighting Kaido. I think the fight was done nicely and how they all started using two sword style, but before that I didn't really care for them that much. And the people of Wano, I don't know, it's a mixed bag, because some of them it was really interesting, but then others it just seemed like it was just an afterthought.
Like realistically, there's two characters in the mainland of Wano that I cared about. One of them was Tama, because of her connection with Ace and Luffy. It was there from the start. There was substance there, right? The other one was Yasu, right? Because of his connection with Zoro. But then, is there any other character, right? Besides, maybe somebody can argue like a far-fetched one is Suru, which is Kinemon's wife. But even that, like, is there any other character in Wano Kuni that we should really like care about, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see it right there. But other, like, as you mentioned, like the Scabbards, right? I was on the boat where that I really don't care for the Scabbards for the longest time. But then I went back and reread like some of the chapters. And then, you know, you build more of a connection with them. And then like them using the Oda and Two Sword style as well. You know, it like all starts to come back. And, you know, it feels good, obviously, that they're like, you know, finally getting their vengeance on Kaido. But I don't think like a standard reader going through Wano, he's not going to be reading it a couple times that, you know, I potentially had to like build that sort of connection with them. I feel like in the first go, like reading week to week, I genuinely did not care about them landing a blow on Kaido. Like, it's like, okay, it just makes Kaido look a little bit of like lower.
Yeah, it definitely felt kind of inconsistent. Do you want to talk about that now, like the power scaling with Scabbards and stuff?
Sure, we can jump right into that. It's probably one of the biggest topics, and that can probably lend into also like another topic we want to discuss, which is the anime and manga's power scaling system, which is completely different.
So as far as the Scabbards landing a hit on Kaido, personally, I just felt that it was really awkward for two reasons. And the main reason is because I'm just questioning, like, what was Kinemon doing in Dressrosa? So, it's like, either Kaido is really just sitting there and trying to get hit and just, you know, like somehow letting his guard down so that the Scabbards can hit him for some reason, which doesn't really make sense. or Kinemon was just not doing anything, not helping Dressrosa, because to me it seems like if he can do this with Kaido, even though obviously there were a lot of them, he should have been able to help against Doflamingo or at least someone of note in Dressrosa.
I feel like, you know how I saw a One Piece tweet about this, like on any Twitter, where it's like One Piece's power scaling is just dependent on situations rather than like having like a strict like, you know, build up of power, where it's like I think they mentioned like example regarding Sanji, right? If the main boss in the Dressrosa is, you know, Doflamingo, then Sanji will always lose to Doflamingo. But even though Queen is probably stronger than Doflamingo, in Wano, Queen isn't like the, you know, top tier. It's like the number 3. So then Sanji can take out Queen. It's like, it's depending on where the story is, right? The powers of the characters vary, which I felt like was a very interesting take. Like, I somewhat agree with it, because like in like a sort of like emotional standpoint, when you're reading through that fight, it's like, yeah, it makes sense why Kinemon was able to damage Kaido, because he had like all this like years of build up rage, and like it manifested in his like, you know, advanced armament or something like that. So like in that sort of standpoint, it builds, like, it makes sense. But then if you like think about it, it's like, wait, like wasn't like Doflamingo involved with Kaido? Like, couldn't you help back there, like somehow? You clearly have the prowess to do it, but he just didn't do it.
Yeah, so I think that it has to be seen as inconsistent writing. I understand where people are coming from, like in the example you gave. It just, Oda kind of just does it based on all narrative, I guess. But I think that part of having a good show, a good series, is the power scaling, and it needs to at least make sense, right? So, you know, you can write in ways for characters to get power-ups, like Raidsu and Enma was a valid explanation as to how Zoro and Sanji got a lot stronger. But I think it's just weird to have characters just fluctuate in strength without explaining it. Like you were saying with the Kinemon thing, the only possible explanation is Kinemon got like a rage boost against Kaido or something. Because if not, again, like the Dressrosa thing, it is really weird why he didn't play a bigger role then.
You know, there's a bit of like inconsistent writing, and I feel like that's a very like, you know, in like a battle shonen, because One Piece technically would be classified as a battle shonen, even though it's more of like an adventure manga. But in a battle shonen, you don't really want something like that, where you want like a progressive build-up, right? Like with Luffy, there was a very like progressive build-up of him, like, you know, him learning advanced observation through Katakuri, and then him like, you know, in like the Udon prison, like learning advanced armament, and then coming to terms with advanced conquerors as well, and him learning to like manifest it in his fist, and then like being able to land blows with it. Like to me, like that sort of progression is only there realistically for Luffy, and then maybe Zoro and Sanji as well to some extent, right? But like other characters just don't seem to apply to it, which, you know, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I can see why narratively the things that have happened. But, you know, it would have been better if, like, you know, like there was a handicap on Kinemon or something in Dressrosa. That's why he couldn't do the things he did right here. Well, with power scaling, right? I feel like the anime power scaling and the manga power scaling are completely different beasts. Which version of the anime do you agree with? I mean, which version of the story do you agree with, the anime or the manga?
So, to be honest, I agreed with the anime up until Wano. So just like quickly my background, I watched the entire anime up until like the end of Whole Cake Island. That's when I caught up. And then I read the manga. I have went back and read the manga for all of One Piece, but I say like it's pretty much like a one-to-one adaptation for most of it, besides some obvious pacing issues. But Wano, things just got a bit ridiculous. I feel like even though the animation's good in Wano, I don't really like a lot of the auras and colors and stuff, because it kind of makes things confusing, especially like when you're trying to power scale or anything. Like even with Zoro versus Kamazo, it's like he's just emitting and leaking haki. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
especially for me, I feel like it wouldn't have been a problem if like the aura and stuff did not exist in the manga as a completely separate thing. Yeah. Where we see like these auras are a prominent thing with users who have advanced armament, with users with advanced conquerors. That's when we see the auras. But then like the anime like digs itself into a hole where it's like they've been using auras for like the most mundane things ever. It's like, oh, Zoro threatening people at the gambling place. Zoro uses aura, right? Is that something that's maybe meant to signify his conquerors, for example? But still, it's like something which, you know, I would have been much happy without. Like, I know people are saying it's DBZ-fying, like, the One Piece verse, right? But more than that, I just feel like it lends itself to too much narrative issues in the future, where it's like something like this is probably already gonna come into the picture, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you know, there's always gonna be people. Sorry. Let me just finish this one point. You know, there's always gonna be people that say, "Don't power scale One Piece. It's toxic." But come on, it's literally a battle manga. Like, stuff like this lends itself to power scaling. And I honestly like. I don't encourage like the toxic power scaling, obviously, but you know, it's something which is gonna happen, and stuff like that just really makes it difficult to like know what's what.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, there's the two main problems with it. Is one, it's kind of always weird when a series like One Piece has been going on for so long, and then you make such a sudden change. But it just seems so inconsistent with everything we've seen before, and now all of this aura stuff going crazy just in a seemingly random arc. And then two, like you were saying, we have advanced conquerors, we have advanced armament shown in the manga, but it's how it's portrayed in the manga is pretty much just the anime whenever anything's happening. Like even with Luffy fighting Kaido at the very beginning of the arc in the anime, we showed him like leaking haki pretty much surrounded by some almost looked like a conqueror's aura just around his whole body. So I'm just kind of confused as to what they're going to do when it adapts the stuff in the manga with advanced conquerors.
Because this is meant to be like flaws in Wano, right? I'm also going to consider the anime here, even though we were talking about the manga the whole time. Man, I genuinely, like, you know, people have been saying like, yo, the anime has been killing it, right? I don't see the hype. I'm sorry. I just don't see it. Like, one episode kills it like every 20 episodes, I think, right? And it's like, okay, for the like for like the Ishikawa episode, like every like, you know, every 6 months, are you realistically gonna say like the anime is the definitive version of the One Piece, like, you know, story? I don't think so.
Yeah, so for me personally, I don't really care about animation that much, and the reason why I don't enjoy, or like the reason why I stopped enjoying the One Piece anime and swapped to the manga was just because of pacing, and pacing hasn't been fixed in Wano. Like early One Piece,
it's more bad. It's probably worse. Yeah, it's like, to me, like, I know people say like, okay, the anime has had a major upgrade, right? Yeah, the art style has had a major upgrade, right? But to me, I feel like the end of Whole Cake Island, like you know, like the near end, like the end 10ish episodes were probably even better than Wano. Like, I feel like, you know, like the bad end musical, like the soul focus at the end by Big Mom, like the musical pieces as well, the tension there, and like, you know, some of the even creative decisions taken by the anime, you know, to show like the whole like pudding, like the end of like the pudding Sanji scene where it's like, you know, a film roll, right? It was in the manga too, but in the anime I just think it was done much better. But in the Wano's anime, right, there was, I remember in the Udon prison, there was this one episode where they adapted, I kid you not, 6 panels or six pages of like the manga, which is less than half the chapter, which to me is just boggles my mind. It's like, how the hell are you able to stretch it this much? And it wasn't even like consistent stretching. It was just Big Mom screaming type of stretching. Like, it was like, oh man, I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous because I don't think the animation was really ever a problem with the One Piece anime. Like, I'm trying to remember, maybe like early One Piece, people might have a problem with the animation, but that's just because it's old. Like, even from Thriller Bark, Sabaody, maybe even Water 7 Enies Lobby, like the anime always looked pretty good. The reason why people didn't really watch the anime was just because of the pacing. Like, less than 1 chapter per episode is ridiculous. Like, I'm with you here. I don't really get the praise for the Wano anime. Like, I tried to watch some episodes and it's pretty much unbearable. I just like watch the clips and skip through them that are animated nicely that I already read in the manga now.
Yeah, I'm for me, right? Every Saturday night, Sunday morning, right? I always hope, hey, maybe this week it's probably gonna be a good one, right? But then, like, it's like, it to me, like, just, you know, not even adapting 1 chapter per episode just seems, you know, abysmal and abhorrent to me. Where it's like, come on, you're actually doing a disservice to the whole, like, you know, to the story itself. Like, you remember how how like intense like the start of Onigashima and beautiful it felt, where you know when they finally got into the house, Zoro broke that little tower thing, you know, like the like Kaido and like his like king and queen like made an entrance where Momo was being shackled up, right? Like I saw the anime episode, literally the whole place like looks like a bright room with like wood everywhere, and it just doesn't have the same atmosphere and vibe which like the, you know, the manga captures. I think my biggest deal breaker in the anime is that it just constantly like, you know, it does things which is just narratively doesn't make sense, right? As I mentioned before, the whole Batman situation, like there has to be something else you could have expanded upon, and other than having like that Batman versus Luffy and Zoro and tanking them. And then recently, Zoro using Conqueror's Haki. Like, what the hell?
I mean,
You are a big Zoro fan from what I've seen from your channel. What was your thoughts on that, Zoro using Conqueror's Haki in the anime against fodder?
I think it was just really wasted. And it even happened before. I don't remember the episode number. I remember early Wano, it seemed like he did something like that when he was fighting a bunch of old dudes. And
yeah, that's the gambling house
like his red eye. Yeah. Like when his eye was glowing and then they all just kind of passed out. I think it's just a waste. Like the manga was clearly building up Zoro having Conquerors like the official reveal for that moment with Kaido, and then the anime just puts it in against some fodder. I don't really understand why they did that.
I remember the whole scene with like Brook and Zoro where Brook is like, hey, did you use Conquerors? And then like it's played up as a gag, right? But it's like, oh, he's gonna use it in the future, right? It's being played up. So now I'm thinking, what the hell are they gonna do when the anime gets to that scene? Because Zoro like knowingly used Conqueror's Haki in the anime, and he used it against fodder, which like, come on, do you want to build up like one of the greatest characters in One Piece is like Conqueror's Haki towards fodder or towards Kaido, right? It's like it just seemed like a bad decision overall. But yeah, I think those are like my major like criticisms and problems with Wano highlighted. But I wanted to ask you, like, overall, like, what's to you the biggest like criticism / low point of Wano?
So definitely those first two arcs, or not first two arcs, first two acts in Wano. And even I'd say the early bits of the Odin flashback until, I guess that's only really a couple chapters, but pretty much everything until Odin, Roger Whitebeard, and then Onigashima and Rooftop. Because I understand that there needs to be like build-up parts, but it just felt really slow. I think also another thing that I had an issue with, I don't think we mentioned this in the video, but you know, Frankie was supposed to be making anti-Kaido weapons, Zoro was supposed to be gathering troops, and that just never happened.
You know, one of the big reasons, right? I'm like still a bit of a supporter of like the whole raid failing like agenda, right? It may not be my agenda, but like still I agree with it. It's because so much stuff was built up, but just we haven't gotten yet, right? So I'm like, we have to like Oda is not a bad writer by any means, right? He's probably one of the best writers I've ever seen, right? It takes hard work and time to construct such an epic, right? But like there's two options here. Either one, he's being like he's trying to like progress the story, so he's not like, you know, that focused on like wrapping up like the minor plot points. But then to me that just seems like a very non-Oda thing to do, where Oda even wraps up the most minute of plot points at some point in the story, right? It all comes back full circle. So like a lot of those things which are built up, right? The Frankie weapon stuff, the Zoro gathering troop stuff, the whole you know, getting captured thing, and Kaido breaking people's wills, which we really haven't seen happen, right? So I hope that all comes full circle. I feel like Wano is a very like oscillating arc for me, in the sense where it has probably some of the best highs I've ever seen in One Piece.
Yeah.
But it equally has some of the most like questionable moments I've seen in One Piece. Where, like, come on, if you can't argue that stretch of between chapters 957 to 967, between the chapters Ultimate, which was, you know, the bounty reveals, to 967, which was the laugh tale and Roger laughed scene, wasn't like probably peak One Piece.
Yeah.
Any other like big overlying thoughts on Wano? Not even criticisms.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with you. Like, it has really high highs, but also incredibly low lows. Overall, I think it is a pretty solid arc. I'm not gonna go as far as some people, because I've seen a lot of people in the community surprisingly actually saying it's like the best arc in One Piece, which I personally just can't give an arc that's ongoing, but I think it definitely has potential to be up there, depending on how the conclusion is.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that Totally Not Mark, like Act 3, like review, where he said that even if Oda just prints blank pages, this is his quotations exactly, even if Oda prints blank pages for the rest of Act 3, Wano will still be my best arc in One Piece, which for me, I think like One Piece arcs are different on a binge and then different like week to week. Like week to week, I don't see Wano as like, maybe it's in my top 10, maybe it enters my top 5, like if it ends well, right? But you know, like there's some big things there which I just feel like if they aren't wrapped up, like narratively, Wano just like lacks something, which like for me the biggest flaw was probably tension and stakes. But overall, my thoughts on Wano are just as you. It's like a pretty solid arc, but you know, it has some very weird moments in it where it's like it makes you think, where it's like, huh, you know, like could this have been done better? Could this have been done a little bit differently? Which I think yes, like it could have been. I'm sure you and I both agree that we both think, you know, One Piece is a very solid story, and it's probably one of our favorites. And you know, we both love, you know, what Oda does, and like we're criticizing a work which is supposed to be criticized. You know, any work is subject to criticism, but we're not criticizing, like, you know, we're not doing any personal attacks on like the author or anything, right? So I hope people understand that as well. So yeah, do you want to have any last words, any conclusion to it?
Yeah, just thanks again for having me. Make sure to everyone here, make sure to leave my guy a subscribe, a like to his channel, you know.
That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Like, I'm very grateful for you to come on, right? It's been a pleasure for me to have you, I think.
Yeah, no problem.
And that's it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. And as he said, if you'd like this little discussion debate thing podcast, be sure to leave a like. If you didn't like it, tell me why. Don't leave a dislike. I'm just joking. But that's it. Have a good day. Bye.